Hello, welcome everyone, and Happy New Year. We are just back from a bit of a holiday break at Prasada, and then Alice and I were guiding a most transformative breathwork retreat in Costa Rica last week. So we are back to snowy Pennsylvania, back to the action of doing what we do at Prasada, and really thrilled to be here today to just talk about this new year. So this is Prasada Talks, how to change in 2024, capturing the energy of a new year. And just in case we haven't met, I am Meg Townsend, wholebeing guide with Prasada. Really excited to be here with Alice today. I told Alice, I was like, I'm leaning on your brilliance today because I come with some thoughts, but a lot of questions as well. Because Alice has done a lot of reading and research and practice on, human change and human behavior. So Alice, just give us a little hello and who you are, just in case people are watching for the first time.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alice Dommert. I'm the founder and CEO of Prasada, and I love change. It's when I've done my numerology and all sorts of other systems, it's just one of those things that excites me and fascinates me. So this is one of my favorite topics. The new year always seems like this big, huge get a new calendar is this time of change, but we have a couple of thoughts today about is this really the best time for change? So glad that you guys are here today.
Yes, glad you're here today. Let's just arrive in the space together. Let's take 3 breaths. So just join me in sliding towards the edge of your chair. So hopefully your feet can be flat on the ground. Press your feet into the earth, press your sit bones into your chair, and just lengthen your spine a little bit more, tail to crown. Then let your eyes soften, maybe even close if that feels comfortable for you. Let's start by taking a deep breath in through our nose. Exhale out of our mouth. Good. And do that twice more at your pace. Inhale through your nose, exhale out of your mouth. More round, inhale through the nose, exhale out of your mouth. Let your eyes slowly flutter open. Bring your attention back to this screen. And so I'd love to, and hello, a couple people just popping in as well. I'd love to ask you this and use the chat to reply to us. When you think about, start to enter a new year, and you think about and hear these echoes of setting goals, making resolutions, what comes up for you? What comes to mind first? What's your relationship with the new year and this resolution time of year? Share that in the chat. And while we're waiting for the Zoom delay, Alice, you've already shared a little bit, but tell me a little more.
Well, if for me, when if I was going to answer that question, I would say it feels like pressure. Um, this idea that a lot of times we're expected to have sort of the whole year planned out, and we're supposed to have all of our stuff ready to go on January 1st, but it comes kind of after a few weeks of experiencing celebrations of a variety of different um, religions and practices, and we all were sort of out of sorts. So it feels a little bit like if you haven't started really planning in about November, you're going to feel behind. So for me, that feels already a little awkward. Like, I don't want to start the new year feeling behind. Or if you're sort of like on the wagon, you're really, really super duper about it. Um, the elements of the seasons are not necessarily with us.
Yes, I'll piggyback on that because that's really what comes up for me the more and more that I've studied Ayurveda, which is the sister science to yoga. And it talks a lot about, the seasons and, what elements are more dominant and, any sort of nature-based reflections and observation, especially in where we are in Pennsylvania. Everything's sleeping right now, right? Everything's sort of slowing down, dormant, sleeping. There's a strong pull you might feel to be more internal, to be more reflective. So to take action might feel a bit discombobulating. And that's kind of what it's always felt for me. It's like, it doesn't feel quite like time yet. Right. And as you said, coming from this celebratory out of our routines to then be like, "Ah," and now very structured routine and whole new life, January 1st, it doesn't flow so well for me. And so what I've started to think about and really lean into, and it's been working for the past 10 years, is using this time more for a little bit deeper reflection and question asking and almost a pause. I mean, there's certain ways we need to take action, of course. We're not bears, so we can't just crawl in a hole and sleep for the next couple of months. But yeah, how can I lean into what's supporting me with this season and then plant some seeds? And then when it's time to bring new life, spring forward and take action, I've laid a good groundwork. So I think of this next couple of months as just contemplative more so. And we've got some people chiming in here. Somebody loves setting up their planner. Someone doesn't make resolutions. And then people kind of threw in just some ideas of like thinking about refining my diet, increasing kindness. So yeah, it's really interesting. And Alice, I think something interesting that you started talking about this year when we were doing some habit change courses and some resilience courses was just this nature about human behavior. So we've talked about the season and how that might not necessarily support immediate change, intense habit change or resolutions right now. But can you draw in some of the research and just really interesting things that you've learned about the nature of human behavior and other things that might prevent us from setting goals or maybe even being averse to doing that?
Yeah, and if you think about it, there are a lot of other systems beside our calendar system. If you look at when is the Chinese New Year, it's not January 1st. When you look back in astrology, the first season is not January is not the time of start. So it almost you always wonder about who was the person who decided that it would start at this moment, kind of in the middle of winter, and also it's the middle of our winter. But if you're in Costa Rica, it's the opposite. So it's this interesting. I mean, I guess we all had to decide on a system. I mean, from a season's perspective, it'd be great if the new year started when spring was popping up. That would make sense, and then we would sort of have the holidays and then be sort of in that hibernation as you were talking about. So Katie Milkman has a book called How to Change, and what she discovered in her research and in her studies was that often um, people are not changing because of one particular element. So I'll just read this. She said that failure wasn't related to knowledge or ability, but to self doubt. So she talked about why do people fail. What is called by psychologists a lack of self efficacy, which is a person's confidence in their ability to control their own behavior, motivation, and social circumstances. In fact, she found that a lack of efficacy can prevent us from setting goals in the first place. So I've definitely had that feeling where it's like, I don't want to set a goal because I don't want to feel the failure of that. Um, but what's interesting is that when you look at the trends of what they said were the wellness trends this year, we're starting to recognize, and this is one of my mantras lately, that like life is a group project. And when you look at what are the wellness trends that they're predicting for 2024, they're saying a holistic culture, so that we're going to be thinking about mind and body and the culture, not just the fish but the water. We're going to be looking at sort of a return to the office, more people returning to the office, because in many cases we do certain things better when we're together. They also identified that like AI is not going to solve everything. Again, because AI is still very individual. And the last trend that they said was that friendship at work is going to be essential for people and the bottom line. And for me, what I hear is that we've got to start realizing that like it's very hard to make change on your own. And so when we tell other people about it, when we get that support, when we get those systems and structures in place to where, you know, I wouldn't work out nearly as hard as I do, but I just get myself to CrossFit and there's a group of people and there's a social aspect of it that I really like. And that's sort of the trap to make sure that I actually do my exercise every day. During COVID, even when I was logging in with them, it was really, really difficult. So it's not the habits, but it's the support system and who we're doing it with. And are we actually, I mean, CrossFit, those have become people who I'm really good friends with. So it's that aspect that we really need to be tapping into. And we keep talking about the culture of change, culture of whole being. Well, when one person doesn't do that on their own, people who collectively say, hey, there's a problem, how can we change this? So how are we supporting more connection with each other? And through that connection, more support toward healthy habits that we want to have.
I love that. Thanks for the reminder, because also it's like when you hook into whatever that community is, then if you don't show up, at some point they're going to reach out and be like, hey, Alice,
Exactly.
hey, what's going on? And, that'll pull you back in. Huh.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because there'll be days where I'm not feeling super strong and enthusiastic, but my partner's like, oh no, let's put some more weight on here.
Mhm.
So I would have sort of just phoned it in that day, but she's having, so our cycles of energy and enthusiasm and whatever, we can sort of play on that as a whole.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I really have been taking away from the time that we've spent with these folks in retreats is that we can make very clear, like, I want to eat better. I want to make that change. Or I want to, exercise more. Those are very clear. You take an action, you can check the box whether you did it or not. But many of us will at some point realize that we have a mindset about something that is a limiting belief, is what they call it, or is a barrier for us being able, if you believe that you just are a horrible sleeper, no matter what you try, you're not gonna have better sleep. You're just, my mother has a bad sleep, or you'll have some kind of story about that. And so sometimes we can get clear and be like, oh, I do have a story about that. I know that when we did that precision nutrition program, that was one of the questions, like, what was your food story? And they did that early on so that we could all acknowledge, each one of us sort of discovered a different story that we didn't even know that we had under there, that was a critical part of changing our eating habits.
Yeah.
Because we had to change that. And sometimes it is a conscious, you're doing a program. But what I've seen over and over again in these retreats is that sometimes when you're in a group and you're in a supported environment, and we do this, we're calling it the infinite journey breath work now. It's sort of an evolution of holotropic breath work. You're deep in there. Sometimes it knows what needs to be released, what needs to be changed. And those kind of things pop up, and it's just like something pops up and you say, oh wow, I don't need that anymore, I can let that go. And we did a whole bunch of different processes. We sort of left things behind in the fire, we threw things into the water. So that kind of change is sometimes not necessarily even intentional. You're putting yourself in an environment, you're putting yourself in a certain kind of water to say, I'm open to see what happens. And those things naturally, it's like a natural process of filtration or something. They rise to the surface, you might see them, and then they just go. I mean, without a whole lot of effort. And I don't think we talk enough about that kind of, and really, I would say that it's not even necessarily change, it's growth, it's evolution. It's like the seasons and cycles. Like, you just, something comes up, you don't need it anymore, it goes away. Have you had those experiences where it sort of surprised you that, like, something popped up and then, whoa, and then it was a shift?
Yes. And I think I really love that you brought this up, because yes, we can work with these on very conscious levels. And then if we're doing practices, mindfulness practices, movement practices, things to like build our intelligent fire, like some of that work is going to be happening under the surface, as you said. And that's been my experience, especially this year. There was an interesting experience where there's a very upsetting situation. And I won't get into too many details because I want to keep it very anonymous, but a very upsetting situation that happened to me in like April, May last year. And I was just like trying to really mentally work it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, there's nothing more that I can do mentally. but I didn't feel like I was quite over it. Like all the seeds of sort of frustration and anger about it had burned away. So I just did what I do. I call it putting it in the cooker. And so it's just like, all right, you're going to cook. I'll come back to you when it rises up again. And actually in Costa Rica during a breathwork session, it came up again. And I was able in that to kind of do those last little pieces of letting it go. But I had realized as well in the breathwork session that there wasn't a lot left. Like I was thinking of like the cords or the anchors that are tethering me to that situation. I was like, oh, there's actually not that much left because I have been processing. And so it's trusting in that process as well. Like we don't have to like mentally muscle our way through everything if we have other supportive practices, if we have that framework. And
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to sort of add to all of the amazing things you've already said is, in my experience, it's also been when I stick with things and keep them going, it's because they're attached to like something that means a lot to me. And that was actually came from precision nutrition. Whenever we did that 10 years ago or something, a while ago, we went through that program. And that was what really stuck because I wanted to be going to the gym more and being a regular gym person, if you will. And I just had I had resistance to it, as you know, and as you saw. But when I finally attached it to a why, and that why was like, I want to be able to, you know, do what I can do now so that hopefully I can climb some mountains when I'm 70, when I'm 80. And I want to put in the work now to be able to do that because that's something that I really value as a part of my life, which to somebody else hearing that might be like, oh, not interested. But to me, that really unlocked the key of I'm going to stick to it because I want to be able to get to the top of a mountain and experience the joy that I experience up there, as long as I possibly can in my life.
Yeah. And one of the beauties about that precision nutrition program was it was a year program. And in that program, for the first 3 weeks, they didn't want us to do anything. They wanted us to think about what did change look like. And they were also so good in the process of knowing that like you're going to get super energized. It's like right now, like the people who did have the energy at the first of the year, and then they say by like February 10th that most of the people are not doing it. They recognize that like you're going to have waves. Like change is a process. So if you mess up, it's not like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to day zero. Like none of that counted.
Yeah.
Like each time that you go and you try something and you have a failure, you're like, oh, okay, I can't work out by myself. I got to work out with a group. It's not that I don't want to work out. It's that like I need these things in place in order to do that. So giving ourselves the grace to also know, yeah, this week I came back and was like, I'm going to start going to the 5 a.m. CrossFit instead of 6:15. Yay. And I went on Monday, which was awesome. And then it snowed on Tuesday. And I was like, no. And I also realized it doesn't snow that much around here, and I didn't have to prove that. And I could do yoga at home, and I could still wake up early. I could practice the waking up earlier part, so that when there's no snow on the ground. But I also just like gave myself the grace to be like, if I start next week, I am making a step. I'm getting up earlier. I did a lot of my other practices earlier, and so I think that's the other thing is that believing in a process,
Yeah.
knowing that a process has the ups and downs and
Mm.
really being kind to ourselves, saying like, okay, today, and also being really honest about like, if I just slept until 7:30, that would have been a totally different thing. Just like, and sometimes that will happen if we don't make the one first little thing. It's like if I cheat and eat a cookie, I'm just going to eat all the rest of the cookies because at this point, like it doesn't matter. Versus being like, okay, I cheated and have one cookie, but I can stop at 3 cookies,
Mhm.
instead of having that.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, just being very clear, kind, and honest with ourselves as we, approach changing, approach, moving towards our goals. And one piece of wisdom that Marco brought to me, you've probably heard it many a time, but last year at our Costa Rica trip was just show up. And that's been very helpful to me because my understanding of the differences of us and all of the years we've worked together is like you're really good at like pushing yourself and just showing up. And so your learning has been giving yourself permission to just do yoga and not show up some days.
Right.
Whereas I've got that pretty down, right? I'm pretty like gentle with myself and can be almost to a fault sometimes, where I need a little more stoke sometimes in certain areas and a little more fire. And those three words really resonated with me. And so, and again, it's all through this process of being honest with myself, being tender, but then also knowing when it's time to stoke a little fire. And that's been a really helpful tool for me in some of the things where I might not want to show up. And then I'm like, just show up. Because also you just show up and you could like walk back, if talking about going to the gym. I could go there, just show up, and then I could leave if I want. But I
Right.
might be there. So I might as well just do all of that. So that's been my mantra sometimes when when I'm not wanting to show up. I wanted to offer that to others who might be like me as well.
Yeah. And that self-awareness of, my story was, oh my God, if I don't get up and go to my workout, like my whole day is going to be horrible,
Mm,
which is equally damaging story. So it's really checking ourselves about like, what is that awareness, what's that old story, or also, we have different we have different seasons, we have different phases. So that's the other part of, maybe I'm doing more yoga now and doing CrossFit 2 days a week or 3 days a week, or whatever it is. So I really think the self-limiting belief is the biggest factor. I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about the tiny habits? Because I just think BJ Fogg and his theory, kind of just for people who are looking at like, how do I make a change? I just think his whole system is pretty brilliant.
yes, in a very short time, just like the elevator pitch of tiny habits. Um, it's a really beautiful system that helps us start to move towards those goals, those resolutions that we have. And it's all about bringing it back to something very small and accessible. I kind of demonstrated that in my gym piece of just show up. Like, just show up could be the tiny habit, but then you can choose, am I going to stay? Am I going to go? But I've made that action to sort of already go. And so when we're looking at building habits, again, first tying it to what does this mean to me?
Yeah.
And what aspiration is this tied to, so that I want to do it in the hard days, that I want to push through. I remember, all right, this is why I'm doing this. Insert whatever the habit is. But then also, I don't know if anybody has the tendency to like, somebody who loves setting up their new planner, do you like plan everything out and shoot too big and then realize, oh, I haven't built the capacity to do all of that right away? And so it's really about scaling it down to the tiniest thing so that you have an assured win. And so let's say I've always used this example of hydration. I'm not the most hydrated person sometimes, although after Costa Rica, I'm so hydrated. But the tiny habits really helped me to build a habit of getting more water into my body. And so the small habit, I'm going to outline this. We have an anchor moment, we have a tiny habit, and then we have a celebration. Those three elements equal a habit recipe, if you will. And so the anchor moment is something that you will reliably do so that you can tie the tiny behavior to it. And so my anchor moment was every morning I will make coffee or get coffee or drink coffee. So every morning coffee is an assured thing. And so then I hooked to that, my tiny habit, which was simply fill up my water bottle. Notice how it wasn't drink a whole water bottle, drink this many ounces, or anything too big. It was simply the act of filling it up. Mm-hmm. And then put it at my desk so that it's there, so that when I'm working, I'll be drinking that water. And then the celebration, really important piece, because that gives our brain that like pep talk and that sort of surge of positive emotions, which makes us want to keep doing it. It's actually brain science. I'm not being very scientific in explaining this, but then the celebration I would always do, because I love to dance. Movement makes me joyful and happy. After I make coffee, I fill up my water bottle and I dance it to my desk. So I kind of got a little more advanced and used the celebration as a way to also get it to where it needed to be. And we do have more about that. We've got some blogs about that. We have a last year tiny habit talk that I did with Debbie Heller. So we've got some information if that intrigues you of that system, or get the book for sure, Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. It's just a really beautiful support system to kind of help you build a framework um, for your habit building and creation this year. We've just got a couple minutes left, Alice, maybe like 2 minutes. Anything you want to add to sort of
Yeah.
wrap this up?
Well, the premise of BJ Fogg, and I think that we just live in a culture where it's like go big or go home. And so
Mhm.
we also, whenever we've got that energy, we're like, oh, let's change everything. And then it's just a recipe for disaster because we're not going to be able to sustain that. And the thing is that when you change one little thing, like if you started drinking more water, you're probably going to get up from your desk more often because you needed to go to the bathroom. So you're going to be moving a little bit more. So the great part is that it's like they're all connected. And so once we start to make one little shift, the other things like we were talking about, like sometimes you don't have to put all the effort. So there's a ripple effect. And so just sort of trusting that like doing a little thing actually can have a ripple effect of some more exponential change and insight. And that success, it is the human nature that we have to feel good while we're in the process of doing that. And that short term, not I'm gonna feel really great in 3 weeks if I keep doing this, because that's just too long for us to sustain that.
And
And
then
just
circling back to the Katie Milkman, like that builds our confidence.
yes,
That builds our ability to say, hey, I actually did that. I can follow through on that. What else? Right? Give me more. Give me more habits to build. That builds that self-efficacy, if you will.
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Please let us know if you have any questions or any way we can support you beyond this. You can always shoot me an email. We will see you again soon. Please enjoy and be safe in this upcoming snow this next couple of days. And good to see some of your names, familiar names. Happy New Year. We are glad to be back and supporting you with these Prasada Talks. Thanks, Megan. We missed you too. All right, everybody. Until our paths cross again, please be well and keep reading the newsletter. Alice has got some good inspirational thoughts and things to chew on as we continue to explore the theme of nourish this month. So nourish yourself in some way this weekend, whether that be food or rest or just the sweetness of community. All right. Thanks, Alice, again for your brilliance.
Thank you. Thanks
I'll get
everybody.
soon. Be well.